Hello and welcome to this edition of The Print Live. And today the question we are asking, what does Prime Minister Modi's latest visit to Russia signify for India? Please do send in your questions as you always do. But to begin with, let me give you a short introduction as to how the visit went. Now, Prime Minister Modi was in Russia. His the main reason why he went to Russia was because he was invited by the Russian President Vladimir Putin to be chief guest at the Eastern Economic Forum that was held in Vladivostok today. Apart from being chief guest at the meeting at the Eastern Economic Forum, which is also called the EEF, Prime Minister Modi had a long bilateral meeting with Russian President Putin. And both sides, as you may have noticed and read in the newspapers and in other news reports today, ThePrint has also reported how President Putin has come in support of Prime Minister Modi and the Modi government at large on the Kashmir issue and on the Article 370, when both leaders have committed to the fact, and President Putin asserted to the fact that yes, it is an internal matter to India, and also that there is no scope for outsiders to speak in the internal matters. Now, this is significant considering the fact that Pakistan at this point of time considers Russia as one of its good friends, not really an ally, but one of its good strategic partners. Also, the fact that we must remember that last month during the UN closed-door meetings that happened between both the sides, that happened at the UN closed-door meeting with all the permanent members, it was seen that how Russia came in support of India, whereas China supported Pakistan. Do send us your question, and I'll be glad to answer those questions concerning Prime Minister Modi's visit to Russia. We have the first question coming in from Srilata. She is asking whether or not this signifies the strategic equation between India and Pakistan. Well, Srilata, I think by strategic equation you mean to say India's relation with Russia vis-a-vis China, or maybe vis-a-vis other countries like US. Well, let's remember that India and Russia always have had a good strategic relationship. Russia continues to be India's biggest defense partner, and there are already several defense deals that are in the pipeline. So at this point of time, yes, and also we've seen historically Russia has always been on India's side. This is not to say that both countries did not have any issues. They do have issues. Of late, we have seen how it has been a concern for India to see that Russia is being seen friendly towards Pakistan, whereas for Russia, it is also a cause of concern that India is a friendly ally and India is also a close partner of the US. Because let's remember, the US under the Trump administration has imposed sanctions on the Putin administration, and there are laws like the CATSA law, under which if any country goes for a defense deal with Russia and do any kind of transaction with them on dollars, they face the threat of sanction. We've seen US has done that with China for buying the S-400 missile system. We have the next question from Lipika, and she's asking, what does this mean with India's relationship with China? Well, that's an interesting question, Lipika. However, let's understand that India deals with each of the countries in a separate strategic intention, with a separate strategic intention. However, India's closeness with Russia has always been viewed by China with little skepticism, and rightly so, because in the world of strategy, in the world of strategic affairs, this is what countries do, but that does not mean one sees another with a lot of suspicion. That is not what how it happens. Having said that, let's also understand at this point of time, we have another question from Lipika coming, that why did he go to Vladivostok? Well, as I said, that Prime Minister Modi first went to Vladivostok because he was invited by President Putin to be the chief guest at the Eastern Economic Forum this year. Prime Minister Modi is the first prime minister to visit the far eastern region, that is the Vladivostok region in Russia. And we've seen that just a couple of hours back, he announced a line of credit of around $1 billion for the development of the far eastern region. Now, let's also understand here that the far eastern region of Russia is being a little, it's been Russia's concern because of the growing Chinese influence there. So with India coming into the picture, it gives a lot of comfort to the Russians. We have a question from Ashmita. There were reports saying that problems are brewing between India and Russia. Is that correct? Yes, that is absolutely correct, Ashmita. Of late, with India being close to US as a strategic ally and also as a business partner and a defense partner, because India has started procuring a lot of defense armaments from US, so that has become a cause of concern for Russia. And also for India, it has become a cause of concern how Russia is increasingly growing closer to Pakistan. However, we've seen that after the visit, both sides have re-engaged again, and they have asserted their commitment towards each other across all sectors, be it connectivity, infrastructure, defense, space, nuclear energy, you name it, and they have made an attempt to bolster and strengthen all the ties. We have a question from Pankaj. Isn't Modi's visit to Russia more due to his need to find an international ally in times of Kashmir instead of strengthening ties with the nation? Pankaj, that's an interesting question to say, to answer that yes, at this point of time when India has taken such a historic decision when it comes to Kashmir, yes, India is not really looking for allies, but yes, this is a time to sort of ascertain who stands with India and who's supporting India's stance. So we've seen Russia has been, apart from US, to some extent, Russia has been in support of this move, and we saw yesterday how both leaders have asserted that this is an internal matter and there is no space for outsiders in this. We also have a question coming in from Farzana Latif. What about Russia-China relationship? Well, Russia-China relationship is quite unique. They have historical ties. Strategically also, they have ties that go back a long way. This is not to say that India has a say in it. However, India continues to be a balancer, and India continues to play a very big and important role when it comes to Russia and China relationship. Having said that, it is also true that Russia and China have their own set of issues, own set of agreement, and India is not a partner in that, and neither it should be. We have a question from Mr. Vikram Sood. What was the need to open credit line for $1 billion? Well, what was the need to do that? As far as the Ministry of External Affairs goes, it seems, and Prime Minister Modi has stated that in a speech at the Eastern Economic Forum, that this line of credit was given for the development of the Far Eastern region. Now, as I also mentioned, that the Far Eastern region continues to be a sore point for Russia because of the growing Chinese influence there. So I'm sure at some point the Russian side must have told the Indian side to play some role there so that the Chinese influence there can be lessened a bit. We have a question from Mr. Sayak, please throw some light on the point Mongolian PM made about strategic ties between Mongolia, Russia, China, and how it will impact Indian interests in Central Asia. I do not know, Shayak, what you are actually talking about, but let's remember that Mongolia remains a central country in the relationship between, India, Russia, and China. However, we've seen, as far as Central Asia is concerned, Mongolia has never really created any sort of issues that will become a point of concern. Now, what do you exactly mean by the point that Mongolian PM made about infra-strategic ties? Well, that is something internal between Russia, China, and Mongolia. I do not think Prime Minister Modi has anything to say to it unless he is asked to do something about it. We have another question from Snehalata, and she is asking, where is Prime Minister Modi going to go next, and will that impact India's economy? Snehata, I do not know in what context you're stating this. However, the next big visit that Prime Minister Modi is going to have is a week-long visit that he is going to have later this month to US, because as you are well aware that the UN General Assembly meeting, the annual meeting is coming up. There are also reports, and ThePrint has also reported that Prime Minister Modi can be meeting President Trump on the sidelines, maybe in New York or in Washington DC. So that is also something Russia will be looking very closely at, because of the very fact that US and Russia, they are really not in good terms at this point of time, when US has passed a legislation like CATSA and imposed sanctions on Russian businesses and on individual Russian businessmen. We also have a question from Rahul. What does this mean as far as India-China relationship goes? Well, India-China relationship is cannot be seen only through the prism of India-Russia ties. India-China has their own problems to settle and own issues to look at. We are mostly on friendly ties. However, we need to understand that the boundary issue has not yet been settled, and that continues to be an ongoing discussion between both the countries. Also, maybe later this year, we will be seeing a second round of informal summit between Prime Minister Modi and Chinese President Xi Jinping. He is expected to visit India, and we'll see from where on do they take the relationship forward. We have another question from Rupesh, and he is asking whether Prime Minister's visit to Russia bolstered trade ties. Well, that's an interesting question, Rupesh. The only weak link probably in the India-Russia relationship is that of trade. And now, although defense relationship is growing, and as I said, that there are still projects to the extent of $12 billion that are there in the pipeline, the trade remains to be abysmal. Now, both sides yesterday we've seen have set a target of about $30 billion worth of trade to be achieved, worth of bilateral trade in goods as well as in services to be achieved by 2025. Presently, the two-way trade continues to remain hover around $10 billion, and now for some reason, trade between India and Russia has not been growing. Now, experts tell me that that is because of reasons concerning high tariffs, sanitary measures and phytosanitary measures and other things related to trade. Also the fact that Indian exporters sometimes find it really difficult to penetrate the Russian markets. I think both leaders yesterday discussed that that needs to be sorted out, and trade needs to be increased to the extent of $30 billion by 2025. Now, how do they do it? By diversifying the export basket, that we'll see in the future. We also have another question from, I don't have the name, from Mr. Roy. What about the defense deals? Mr. Roy, that's a good question. Now, as I have answered before, Russia remains the biggest defense partner for India. We've seen how India has remained firm on its stance that it will procure the S-400 missiles from Russia, despite the fact that US has threatened India with CATSA. US has not threatened Russia with as many as, official level. But yes, we've seen what US has done with China, and the fact that US is planning the same with Turkey. Even after that, India has said that it will go for the S-400 deal. We need to also understand that at this point of time, we have other deals like the Kamov helicopters, the Kalashnikov rifles, the frigates, and many other deals to the extent of $12 to $13 billion that are in the pipeline, which are still being negotiated. Well, thank you so much for your questions. Those are very interesting questions, and we hope that you log in again tomorrow for another set of interesting topic that will be coming up. Thank you.